Okay. My name is Reed,
And I'm Axel.
and we are here to talk about A Good Man is Hard to Find by Flannery O'Connor. And we're going to start off with some of the accomplishments that she has reached while being an author. She's one of the greatest American short story writers and considered a master of the short story form. She's a two-time winner of the O. Henry Award. She has published two major short stories collections, A Good Man is Hard to Find and Other Stories, and Everything That Rises Must Converge.
Yeah, so additionally did a little research on what her style of writing is, and she's really well known for Southern Gothic dark irony and profound Catholic theology. And we can see that all of these topics are brought up in her short story, A Good Man is Hard to Find. It takes place in parts of Tennessee, Georgia, and then they're traveling towards Florida. So it is in the South, and then also it has a lot of dark irony, and Catholicism and Christianity is a major aspect of the story. So the next thing we'd like to talk about is just the opening of the story. So it starts with the grandma, Bailey, who's her son. And grandma is just known as grandma. She doesn't, her name isn't actually stated. So grandma, Bailey, her son, Bailey's wife, their two kids, and a baby. And so they're all eating breakfast in their kitchen, and grandma's reading the newspaper, and she reads about an escaped criminal called the Misfit. And this is a really essential plot point, but if you want to talk about a little bit about the foreshadowing, that'd be great, and what your opinions on that are.
We do find out later on in the story, the Misfit is down where they are traveling towards Florida, but they find the Misfit in a variety of turns that we will explain later. But he is foreshadowed to show that a lot of the planning that the grandma does goes out of whack, and she causes a lot of the horrible things that happen later on in the story because she believes herself to be better than everyone else in the family.
Yeah, so we get our first impression of grandma pretty much immediately in these first two opening paragraphs. When she's talking about the Misfit, reading the newspaper, and just critiquing her other family members. So one of the main things she says is, quote, "I wouldn't take my children in any direction with a criminal like that a loose in it. I couldn't answer to my consciousness if I did." I really like to bring up the point that she says, "I couldn't answer to my consciousness if I did it." It's so condescending and ironic in a way that she's always talking about how I couldn't answer to my consciousness. I couldn't do that because I'm such a moral person, is what she's trying to say. And, that's not fair to the rest of her family members, and it shows how she believes that she's above everybody else, when in reality, she could just, if she truly believed this, she could just give the advice hey, I feel like it's not safe to take our kids in the same direction that allegedly the Misfit is heading. But really, all she cares about is trying to be and seem morally superior to the rest of her family.
Well said, well said. And then during their trip towards Florida, we are introduced to Red Sammy, who is the owner of Red Sammy's Barbecue. That is a restaurant.
And I was going to just say, just for clarification, the family stops at his diner on the way there. But continue on, Reed.
And during the dialogue between Red Sammy and the grandma states that finding a good man nowadays is harder to find than it was when she was younger. And Red Sammy agrees with her, also stating that people with better manners are harder to find because people don't have the same values as they did while both of them were growing up in the South.
Yeah, so Red Sammy, he really indulges the grandma and his wife does too, but mainly him. And one of the quotes from their conversation was, the old lady said that in her opinion, Europe was entirely to blame for the way things were now. Just shifting blame. You can see that the grandma, she's always looking to blame somebody else or explain how it's not her fault or it's not her people's fault, like the American people, when I'm saying her people, or and she wants to blame the outsiders, the Europeans or whoever else. She doesn't so she doesn't want to take the blame of if stuff is truly worse nowadays, which I mean I don't believe it is. She doesn't want to take the blame for that. She wants to blame foreign nations in Europe, which is just crazy to shift blame like that.
Yeah, completely different continent.
Yep.
And why do you think that grandma was so oblivious to how how horrible plantations were?
Oh yeah, so the story continues on with her wanting to visit a plantation, and this plantation was somewhere she grew up, and she doesn't once acknowledge that this plantation was that not just this plantation, but all plantations were such horrible places. Instead, she just focused on how pretty they were and how good her life was back when she was living on them when she was younger. And I don't know if I would necessarily say that she was oblivious to the horrors that occurred in these places. But I mean, it's possible, but I think that she's more just skipping over it and is okay with looking past it because she wants to romanticize the past. And she also tries to objectify people, and I don't think that she considers African Americans to be full citizens. She doesn't value them as high as she values other white people. And we can see this from multiple different quotes. One of them, she's while they're driving in the car, she sees a black child, and she calls him, quote, a pickaninny, which is just a really racist and offensive term for black children back in the time. And you can see that she actually calls him a cute pickaninny, which is basically objectifying him and being like, oh, look at him, he's cute, and I'm going to be nice and call him cute. But at the same time, she's being racist. And then just the very next sentence, she calls him the N-word as well, which is just clearly not okay. And it's not something that a moral person would do, and they would understand that this is wrong. But she's trying to seem the grandma's trying to seem like, oh, I'm being nice, and I'm but she really just objectifies this kid, and she objectifies the rest of the people that she probably grew up with on the plantation. And so that's why is one of the reasons she probably just overlooks all the horrors that occurred back then.
Yeah. And I would like to piggyback off of that and kind of say that she objectifies her grandchildren and uses them as forms of leverage for the entire family to get her way using nostalgia and guilt. She even uses the misfit as an object to force the family to try to listen to her, because he is released in Florida, and they're trying to go towards Florida. And so she uses the children try to go to Tennessee, which is their other destination, correct?
Well, she wants to go visit that plantation that she grew up on. So she uses the children as she told the children, oh, there's a hidden room in this plantation with treasure, even though it's explicitly said that the grandma knows there's not, and she's just completely lying to them because she wants to get them on her side to convince Bailey to drive them to that plantation, and it does work. Yeah. But yes, she does also use the misfit as fear, which is ironic actually because of what happens later on in the story, which if you want to continue talking about that.
Okay, I'm going to still say a little bit about the children. I would say even her using them causes the children to act misbehaved and even worse than when at the beginning of the story, because the grandma plays into that so that they listen to only her and not the parents. But going back to the misfit, They do end up seeing the misfit because of the grandma's decisions to go towards the plantation, and they end up getting in a crash
and a crash caused because of her.
And a crash caused because of her. Most of her decisions in the story has led to herself and her entire family, leading into a series of very unfortunate events that end up the demise of the whole family, including the grandma. But I will let Axel here explain what the misfit represents as a whole, and just let him take it away from there.
Yeah, so the misfit, he kind of just represents, I guess a misfit, because he's representing like nonconformity and somebody who doesn't understand like why social norms are important or why we care about morals and ethics, and he doesn't believe, like to put it into one statement, he doesn't believe that if you put good out into the world, good will come back to you. Yeah, so the quote that he says is, "I found that the crime don't matter. You can do one thing or you can do another. Kill a man or take a tire off his car, because sooner or later you're going to forget what it was you done and just be punished for it." So what he's saying is that he feels that in his life he's faced so much punishment and so much like he's gone through a lot of things that have been horrible in his life, and he believes that if he's killed somebody or if he's helped them or if he's just taken a tire, it doesn't matter what happens, and no matter how good or how bad of something he does, he gets punished the same way. And I think that's what he really represents, is someone who doesn't believe that being good is important or being bad is important. He's just going to do what is going to benefit him in that moment.
And the grandma, during this interaction between the two after the car crash, she believes and tries to convince this misfit that he is a good man and that he should spare all of them. But the reason why they're not getting spared is because the grandma even recognizes him and speaks aloud that she recognizes him. And the misfit has none of it. He knows he's bad and doesn't think that being a good person matters, because at the end of the day, he has committed so many bad things that it doesn't matter even if he tries to be good now and save this family and decide not to do anything with them. And yeah, that's my take. And I believe he also stands for like anti-religion, because he's directly opposed with a very religious woman. And I believe like in the story he represents that sometimes morality can be with religion, but also cannot be with religion.
Yeah, so another important point in the story is Grandma's redemption, or her attempt at redemption. And I just want to ask you, Reed, do you believe that Grandma has a redemption? Because she does say to the misfit, "You're one of my babies, you're one of my children." And this kind of empathy that she shows him is really out of character for her. And I just want to get your take on it and like what you think about it.
I think it's a very important moment in the story where she realizes that the way she has been acting throughout all her life is not correct. But me personally, I do not think that if she somehow survived this interaction, she would change. She would keep that change and internalize it. I think she would just end up forgetting about it, kind of like how the misfit forgets about all the bad things he's done.
It's a good parallel. I like that.
Yeah. And I think she would just forget about it, because at the end of the day, she's a grandma, so she's pretty old, and so she's lived all her life, 50 plus years perhaps, with one mindset, and I don't think one life and death interaction will change that, because even Misfit states that she needed to be shot at every minute of her life to be a good person. And so I believe she would not stay a good person.
Yeah, I do think your take is good, and I think that your analysis of her, actually, she does, redeem herself, but she probably wouldn't have kept that. I think that the fact that she did redeem herself is true, but I actually disagree, and I think that she would have held on to that newfound morals and ethics, and I think that she started to see like the errors in her ways. She has a quote where she says, maybe he didn't raise the dead. And at this point, she's referring to Jesus, because they had a long dialogue about how, the misfit really wanted to see if Jesus really did raise the dead. And this would be like proof to him that morals are important, but he doesn't know. So he has this huge conflict, and and Grandma basically feels bad for him, and that prompts her to say, you're one of my babies, you're one of my children. And this happens right after she says the quote, maybe he didn't raise the dead, and it shows that she's sort of like throws away her attachment to her religion that she's been trying to get the misfit to adhere to, and that she's been thinking, makes her a moral person and defines her life. But she kind of throws us away in her last moments. And I'm not saying that she would, if she continued to live on, she wouldn't still be religious, but she kind of throws away this religion here for a minute and maybe doubts it. And then her true morals are shown. And I think this is such an important thing to be shown. And it also kind of moves us on to our next point, and our probably our most important discussion point, and that's really like what does it mean to truly be moral? And I think that having religion is great, it can all be good, but it doesn't necessarily make you moral. And Grandma realizes that in that final moment where she doubts Jesus, she doubts God, and then she has this epiphany that she still should have empathy for the misfit, even if God isn't real, or Jesus isn't real, or he didn't raise the dead. Even if none of that matters, she should still be moral to him. And I think that is such an important plot point to this story.
Yeah, I agree with that point. And if religion does have a plain morality, it sometimes does, but a non-religious person can still have moral belief based on what they believe. And religion can help guide them into believing the right things, but also if you're non-religious, you can still believe the different things. Religion plays into morality, but it is not like the one rule that you need to have to be able to be moral in your life.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And I have a quote from New Catholic Encyclopedia that talks a little bit about that. It says, Scripture contains many assertions and record numerous events having to do with morality. Yeah, so I think ultimately the story reveals what it truly means to be a good person. It doesn't take manners, religion, or rules to be an ethical or good person. It's something that comes from empathy, selflessness, and vulnerability, like what the grandma experienced in her final moments. And it explains that everyone has the ability to be moral, even somebody like grandma. But it can take, a really intense experience, such as a life or death situation. Do you have any final thoughts, Reed?
A lot of my thoughts mirror yours. But I would like to add on that a good person also just treats others the way they want to be treated, with respect, sometimes it can be manners, but at the end of the day, you want to treat someone like you're treating yourself, with love, with respect, and just goodness from your heart, and not trying to get something from that person you're being good towards.
Well, that's very well said. And yeah, that wraps up our podcast, An Argument for an Angel.